The yacht club's grand deck shimmered under the afternoon sun, its polished wood gleaming beside rows of sleek sailboats bobbing gently in the harbor. Amelia Wade moved quietly between the tables, her plain uniform a dull contrast to the elegant dresses and crisp suits surrounding her. She carefully folded fresh white towels, stacking them on the service cart, her hands steady despite the prying eyes of the wealthy guests. The chatter was lively, laughter bubbling over clinking glasses, conversations about yachts, summer estates, and art collections swirling around her like a distant current she neither joined nor interrupted. Amelia kept her gaze low, nodding politely when offered a brief smile, avoiding any unnecessary words. A sharp comment, barely masked as a joke, caught her attention. "Look at her shoes," whispered a woman nearby, lips curling with amusement. "Like she stepped out of a thrift shop." A man snorted softly. "And that accent, bet she doesn't even know what they're talking about." She slipped past them with practiced grace, the sting of invisibility tucked neatly away. This was a place where it was easy to be overlooked, easy to be dismissed as just another background figure. The yacht club was a world apart from her own quiet routines, a place where extravagance was the norm and she, in her simple clothes, felt like an unintended shadow. The luncheon buzzed with energy, servers weaving between tables, waiters balancing trays heavy with canapes, champagne glasses sparkling in the sunlight. Suddenly, a sharp hissing sound cut through the hum near the outdoor catering grill. Amelia's eyes snapped toward a small propane tank, a sudden burst of flame flared, licking at the nearby tablecloths. Panic flickered across faces as guests jumped back, the laughter dying in a heavy silence broken only by frantic shouts. The fire flickered, growing, and the yacht club deck's bustling warmth turned to chaos. The moment the propane tank erupted in flame, a surge of fear rippled through the yacht club's grand deck. Guests scattered, some stumbling over chairs, others whipping out phones in disbelief or to call emergency services. The elegant luncheon transformed in seconds from a picture of refined ease to a scene swirling with panic. White tablecloths caught alight as a gust of wind spread the fire treacherously toward a nearby rigging mast, the heat pushed against faces flushed with alarm. At the center of the confusion, nearly everyone seemed frozen or shouting over each other without any effective direction. The maitre d', a tall man with graying hair named Victor, barked orders to his staff: "Call the fire brigade. Move the guests. Keep calm." But his voice trembled. Waiters, newly hired for the event and unfamiliar with emergency procedures, froze with trays mid-air or glanced at one another, unsure of what to do. A few guests tried to usher others away from the flames, but it was muddled chaos with no clear leader. Amelia's heart pounded, but not in panic. Years of training whispered beneath her skin, steadying her motions. She took a swift step forward, catching the attention of two waiters standing near the grill. Her voice, low but sharp, cut through the cacophony. "Clear this area, now. Guests, follow me toward the dock exit." Her tone was calm, authoritative. A few heads turned, some with a flicker of amused disbelief. "What's she doing?" came a hushed question from a nearby couple, their eyes narrowing at Amelia's plain uniform. "She's just the towel clerk." A waiter shot her a skeptical look and muttered, "Who does she think she is?" But beneath the whispers a shift began. People instinctively responded to her calm direction. Amelia moved swiftly to the grill, her gaze locking on the propane tank, which hissed ominously. She noticed the valve near its base wasn't shut, likely the fuel source feeding the furious flame. She barked at a burly staffer nearby, a young man named Lucas, "Turn off the gas. Now." Lucas hesitated, eyes wide, but nodded and moved toward the tank. Without missing a beat, Amelia grabbed the nearest fire extinguisher from a stand close by. She adjusted the nozzle and pointed at the flames, releasing a steady stream of white foam onto the fire. The hiss of the extinguisher combined with the crackle of shrinking flames, but the fire wasn't going down easily. Another waiter, still frozen by the spectacle, dropped a tray of sparkling wine glasses, shattering glass across the floor. Amelia's voice remained firm, everyone away from the edges of the deck. Stay low. Watch your step. She pressed forward, directing guests to move toward the larger gangway that led to a lower dock away from the main cluster of boats. Keep calm, just like this, breathe. A wealthy guest, a tall man in a tailored navy blazer, stepped toward her abruptly. You, stop. Let the professionals handle this, he insisted, voice sharp, eyes narrowed as if scolding a child who dared speak out of turn. I am handling this, Amelia said without flinching, her voice still steady and patient. I worked emergencies before. Getting everyone safe is priority one. She caught the man staring, a flicker of doubt surfacing in his eyes despite his defensive posture. The fire slowly began to subside under the extinguishing foam, but small hot embers jumped to the deck's wood, smoldering. Amelia signaled to Lucas, who was winding the gas valve closed tighter. Good, hold it there. Call 911 again, we need backup. Lucas obeyed instantly, his hands steadier. Nearby, a mother clutched her toddler, her face white with fear, struggling to hold her child away from the smoke. Amelia moved toward them, kneeling and speaking softly, We're safe right now, but we need to move quickly. Can you walk with me? The mother nodded hesitantly. Amelia took the child and found herself surrounded by guests who were now following her lead, their previous indifference replaced by cautious trust. Some senior guests, often dismissive before, now nodded silently as they followed her calm directions onto the safer dock. The maitre d' Victor, who had seemed overwhelmed moments before, approached Amelia. How are you so composed? He asked quietly, a note of genuine respect in his voice. Amelia simply replied, I've been through this kind of thing before. Her words sent a ripple through the crowd. Guests, previously murmuring with gossip and amusement, now exchanged looks of surprise. The yacht club's luxury was steeped in appearances and titles, yet here stood Amelia, who had been so often overlooked, orchestrating safety with a steady hand. Amelia's voice rose once more, firm and clear, keep calm, keep moving toward the exit. If anyone feels dizzy or unwell, sit down here by the bollards, someone will check on you. A couple of younger staff members snapped out of their freezing stupor and began helping guests as instructed. As firefighters arrived, alerted just minutes before, Amelia passed a final check on the grill area. The flames were nearly extinguished, smoke still curled, but order was restored. One of the firefighters gave a nod of approval, receiving a quick, respectful nod back from Amelia. The crowd, once a sea of chaos and fearful shouts, now stood quiet and attentive. People regarded Amelia with new eyes. The whispered mockery was gone, replaced by curious glances and a slow gathering of thanks. Guests whispered among themselves, some even clapping quietly, as they recognized that the quiet towel clerk had been the calm voice guiding them through the unexpected disaster. Amelia allowed herself a brief breath of relief. The propane fire was out, and escalation stopped. The yacht club lunch wasn't ruined, it was saved, not by the usual officials, but by a woman who had long been invisible. And in that silence after the crisis, the only clear sound was Amelia Wade's voice, a voice that now carried weight far beyond her modest uniform. The sharp scent of antiseptic filled the cramped ambulance, where Amelia Wade knelt beside a young man caught in the wreck of a 3-car pileup. Her hands moved with practiced precision, checking his pulse, assessing his breathing, soothing his frightened voice as she relayed instructions to colleagues. Amid the chaos of sirens and shouted commands, her calm, clear-headed decisiveness instilled order. She had been a paramedic for almost a decade, known among her peers for an uncanny ability to stay steady under pressure. Flashbacks tugged at her consciousness as she worked, memories surfacing amid the rush of adrenaline. Years ago, in a hospital training room bustling with hopeful trainees, Amelia had earned her paramedic certification with flying colors. Scores of late-night study sessions and grueling physical tests had honed her reflexes and knowledge, but it was the moments in the field, cradling lives between danger and hope, that forged her true strength. She had led rescue efforts in countless emergencies, from car crashes on icy roads to heatstroke rescues at crowded festivals. But there was another memory that clouded those triumphs. The ambulance accident on a rainy night when the world she built came undone. The vehicle had collided with a truck running a red light. The impact sent Amelia flying into the dashboard. She woke in the hospital with a fractured leg, bruised ribs, and a medical license suspended pending investigation of her ability to continue on the ambulance crew. The physical injuries healed, but the emotional scars lingered, compounded by murmurs from colleagues casting doubt on her capacity to return to the front lines. Her career had faltered. The suspension stretched out into months as she wrestled with physical therapy and mounting bills. Unable to afford the time or resources to regain certification immediately, she'd taken any work she could find: dishwashing shifts, cleaning jobs, small roles far from the urgency that once defined her. Amelia's current role at the Yacht Club was the latest in a series of humble jobs. It wasn't the medical career she'd dreamed of nor trained for, but it sustained her and her younger brother, David. Watching over him since the death of their mother, Amelia had swallowed pride, stepping quietly into roles far beneath her potential. Yet beneath the plain towel uniform, the skills had never dulled. During breaks, she read paramedic journals on her phone, refreshed protocols, and ran scenarios in her mind. The quiet determination had never left her. The afternoon of the Yacht Club luncheon felt like a fragile balance of separate worlds, the elite ease surrounding her, and the clenched focus of her trained instincts. For all the sneers and dismissal from guests about her slow Midlands accent and thrifted clothes, Amelia had survived harsher trials. Even moments after the fire had been doused, she recalled the throbbing relief in her legs when she first knelt beside that injured crash victim years ago, comforting him in the dark. That was the real Amelia, the woman who had built her life on care, knowledge, and steady hands. But the weight of loss hung heavy in her memories. Her mother had passed after a long illness, leaving Amelia as both sister and guardian. The older sibling had tightened her grip, sacrificing dreams to provide stability for David. The ambulance crash had been the cruel twist in a life already full of responsibility. She remembered the nights juggling shifts, school runs, and therapy appointments, the taste of exhaustion mingled with determination not to disappoint those she loved. Despite setbacks, Amelia bore no bitterness. She accepted the path laid before her and moved forward with quiet grace. A sharp beep from her watch broke the tide of memory. The present surged back, the flutter of panic amid Yacht Club guests, the fire's heat on her skin, the weight of responsibility briefly lifted when she stepped forward. She had flinched neither in those moments nor in fear afterward. Her humility had blinded many to her true nature. Here she was, a woman often ignored, who, instead of shrinking away during crisis, had become the steady hand that stopped disaster. Her past was not some hidden secret but a core of experience so deeply lived it stayed beneath the surface, ready whenever needed. The sun dipped lower over the marina, casting shadows across the polished deck. Amelia folded the clean towels with slow care, trading the chaos of first response for the quiet rhythm of preparation. The crowds no longer amused themselves at her expense, but that didn't define her. Her mind traveled back again to the ambulance bay where she had once stood, uniform crisp, badge proudly worn. Those days felt distant, yet unbroken. The strength she'd gained there was the current steadying her now. Life had knocked her from that path, but it hadn't erased her purpose. Instead, it had refined it into a quiet resilience, one that no mockery or dismissal could touch. She was a woman who could lose a career but never lose herself. And as the yacht club lights flickered on, welcoming guests still milling cautiously about the luncheon space, Amelia prepared for whatever came next. With steady breath and deliberate steps, she embraced what she was, someone who carried skill and courage beneath unadorned clothing and soft words. Amelia Wade might be dressed simply, but her past marked her as someone shaped by urgency and care, ready to respond whenever needed. The towel clerk they overlooked was, in truth, a guardian in waiting. In the hours following the propane tank incident, the atmosphere at the yacht club shifted subtly but unmistakably. The whispered doubt that had trailed Amelia Wade like a shadow dissolved into conversations tinged with surprise and gratitude. Guests who had barely acknowledged her presence before now sought her out in quiet corners of the sunny deck. The wealthy hosts, previously wrapped in their own affairs, approached her with hesitant smiles and genuine thanks. Victor, the distinguished maitre d', found her near the coat racks, carefully folding napkins with calm movements. "Amelia," he said, clearing his throat, "I want to personally thank you. Your quick thinking saved lives today." His voice was sincere, the formality stripped away in the warmth of his gaze. "We were all frozen, but your calmness was everything." Amelia offered a small, understated smile, nodding. "I did what I could," she replied simply, her voice steady but soft. "I'm glad everyone is safe." Word of her role had begun to circulate beyond the yacht club's polished walls. Guests swept up in pride for the establishment took to social media, posting videos and messages captured at the luncheon. Caught on a smartphone near the dining tables was Amelia's sharp, commanding voice, clear and direct, cutting through the chaos like a lifeline. The video spread swiftly. Comments lauded the unsung hero, who stepped forward without hesitation. Some messages noted surprise that someone so unassuming possessed such skill. Others shared relief and gratitude, thanking her for steadying their nerves and orchestrating a safe retreat. A local news crew arrived the next day, drawn by the viral footage and the emotional reactions flooding online. Amelia sat with a mild expression, hesitant but composed, answering questions about what had happened. In stark contrast to the high-gloss surroundings, her modest clothing and natural demeanor spoke of authenticity rather than performance. One elderly guest, Mrs. Carter, gave a heartfelt statement on camera. "She saved my life. When the flames started, I was terrified, but Amelia's voice reminded me to breathe, to move calmly. I can never thank her enough." Tears glistened in her eyes as she clasped Amelia's hands. Meanwhile, the yacht club staff began to see Amelia with fresh eyes. For the first time, colleagues greeted her with nods or smiles instead of fleeting glances or dismissive shrugs. Lucas, the burly young staffer who had followed her commands during the fire, offered a rare grin. "You're different from the others," he said quietly. "You know what you're doing." The shift was palpable. The staff room, once a space where Amelia had sat alone during breaks, now buzzed with respectful chatter, her presence no longer the background noise but a welcomed part of the team. A waiter who had joked earlier about her clothes approached with a shy apology, admitting he hadn't realized how capable she was. Across social media, a quiet movement began, a collective effort to share Amelia's story. Photos surfaced, some from the yacht club's archives, showing a young woman in paramedic uniform responding to emergencies years before. An old interview posted by a training academy recalled her as a dedicated and compassionate trainee who had moved rapidly into frontline roles. Online accolades poured in. Former colleagues expressed admiration, some reached out personally to offer support. The narrative was clear: she was more than a towel clerk, she was a skilled professional who had been navigating unexpected changes but had never lost her true self. Despite the attention, Amelia remained grounded. She continued to do her duties with the same quiet diligence, aware that her work mattered far beyond the way it had been seen before. Each respectful greeting, each word of thanks, invited her to step further out from the shadows. That evening, the Yacht Club hosted a small gathering in her honor. Invitations were discreet, meant to celebrate without ostentation. Victor handed her a neatly folded letter, an offer from the club's board acknowledging her bravery and proposing a role on the safety committee to advise on emergency preparedness. Holding the letter, Amelia felt a mix of surprise and quiet pride. Her journey was far from over, yet this moment marked a turning point. The woman they once overlooked was now a respected voice in a community that had once seen her as invisible. As twilight deepened, Amelia stood on the Yacht Club's balcony, watching the harbor lights flicker against the darkening water. The breeze stirred the hem of her plain shirt, but beneath it, she carried a new strength, one born not of grand gestures, but of steadfast courage quietly earned. The tide had turned. The voice that had calmed panic, the hands that had fought fire, were no longer hidden. The towel clerk was becoming a symbol of resilience and competence, a reminder that sometimes, the quietest people hold the greatest power. Weeks had passed since the propane incident at the Yacht Club, but for Amelia Wade, life was anything but routine. The new respect from guests and colleagues slowly seeped into her days, lending a quiet warmth she hadn't known in years. Yet beneath it all, a familiar restlessness stirred, a reminder that the path she had put aside for survival was still there, waiting. One late afternoon, as the Yacht Club's calm returned with the gentle lapping of harbor waters, a figure approached Amelia as she stacked towels in the staff lounge. It was Dr. Clara Benson, a well-regarded instructor from the Regional Emergency Medical Training Center. She extended a folder with deliberate care. "Amelia," Dr. Benson said with a smile that held both warmth and professionalism, "your actions during the recent fire, your calm command and swift intervention, did not go unnoticed. We believe you still have what it takes, and we'd like to offer you a spot in our elite paramedic recertification program." Amelia stared down at the folder, her pulse quickening despite the composed expression on her face. The program was known for rigorous training, physically demanding, with sharp assessments, but it represented a chance to reclaim the career she had set aside years ago. Thank you," Amelia replied softly, voice steady but tinged with hesitation. "I didn't expect. I haven't practiced in a long time." Dr. Benson nodded. "We understand. That's why the program is designed not just to refresh skills but to support those returning to the field. Given your experience and the way you handled the emergency recently, we think you're more than ready." Amelia closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of the decision. The years of quiet sacrifice, the doubts pressed deep beneath the surface, all battled in that moment. What if she wasn't the same? Could she balance her responsibilities as a guardian for her brother, still growing, still needing her? Her thoughts turned to the messages she had received, thank yous from shaken guests, respectful nods from co-workers, and Mrs. Carter's tearful interview. These were not just words but tangible affirmations that her voice, her hands, still mattered profoundly. "I want to do this," she said finally, voice stronger. "For me. For him. I want to know that I'm not hiding anymore." Dr. Benson smiled, genuine and encouraging. "We'll support you every step." The first day of the recertification program felt like walking into a familiar arena with new challenges. Amelia donned the crisp, navy blue uniform, the insignia freshly embroidered on her chest, and stepped into the brightly lit training facility. Around her were faces both new and seasoned. Some eyed her curiously, others welcomed her with respectful nods. The instructors put the group through simulations, stabilizing trauma victims, managing cardiac arrests, coordinating with emergency teams. Amelia's muscles ached, her breath came heavy, but her mind cut through the fatigue, sharp and responsive. Memories from her paramedic days surfaced instinctively: how to check airways, how to reassure a frightened patient, how to think in the chaos. Between drills, Amelia shared quiet moments with fellow trainees, forging bonds through shared purpose. For the first time in a long while, she felt part of something beyond survival, part of a community dedicated to saving lives. Back at home, David looked up at her one evening after a long shift, eyes wide with admiration. "You're amazing, Em," he said simply. "Mom would be proud." Amelia smiled, the exhaustion fading in that small moment of pure affection. She felt a swell of hope she hadn't allowed herself before, the possibility of a future that honored both her strength and the love anchoring her. As weeks turned into months, Amelia grew more confident. She stood taller in the uniform, spoke with a voice carrying steady assurance. She no longer slipped into the background when challenges arose but embraced her role with pride. One night, after a demanding day balancing training and work, Amelia returned to her modest apartment. She sighed with relief as the familiar scent of home greeted her. David was waiting, arms open wide. She sank into his embrace, a quiet victory in that warm hug, no longer invisible, no longer afraid. The path ahead held uncertainties, but Amelia faced it with clear-eyed resolve. Her journey was her own, a testament not to what she'd lost, but to what she'd reclaimed: courage, identity, and the quiet knowledge that sometimes the most extraordinary strength resides in those once overlooked.